What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome in to another episode of the Triple Play Fantasy Football Show, a proud member of Fantasy Points and the Fantasy Points Media Group. D. Mendy here, joined by Doc and the Bradstradamus tonight. Fellas, how are we doing? We ready to talk a little AFC North, hard-hitting division? How
yes, sir.
David, I sat in that seat like 2 hours ago, and it was weird. I felt like D. Mendy for half an hour.
I had to disinfect it once you left, so.
Nice.
But yeah, no, Eric was doing his conference calls in my office, or if you want to call this my office. And did you feel different, Doc? Were you feeling different being in this seat?
You know what the worst part is the client didn't show, so I drove to your house for nothing. But it was nice to see you, David.
You were on the phone. I heard you on the phone. What were you doing?
I was on the phone with my manager.
While he was working, he was missing out on the big basketball argument that me and James were having during group text.
Dang.
Like 55 messages he missed.
I have 55 messages I have to catch up on.
What's just in 30 seconds or less, what were you guys arguing about?
I was trying to say that there's no proof to show that Trae Young is an elite shooter.
Oh, wow. All right. We've got a lot to catch up on.
Oh, man, that's an interesting debate. I don't know what you use for that, but
I use statistics. I use his shooting percentages.
No, I feel like I guess as good a metric as you can use for that. So,
but this is football, so we'll talk football today.
Fair enough. As we talked about, we're going to talk about the AFC North again for Fantasy Points first. If you guys want to sign up for that, there's so many great things. Projections are up. They got DFS tools. They've got rankings. They got everything you need over at fantasypoints.com. Use code TriplePlay22. You'll get access to all those amazing things. And our guy, NBA Rigged, is in the house tonight. My man, love when he hangs out here. He's going to keep track of any water bets we make tonight.
He's probably most active in the Discord. I got a lot of love for NBA Rigged.
Rigged and Britton's pretty active in there.
Trae Young is always a stellar fantasy option, not real NBA. Thank you, NBA Rigged. He's a stats guy like myself.
He's an awesome guy, and he's in the Triple Play Fantasy Discord, which if you're not in already, you guys got to be in there. We've got 76 members, I think, something like that, growing every day, talking baseball, basketball, and football, talking movies and video games.
78.
I'm shortchanging it here. We got a lot of awesome members in there. It's active all the time. So if you guys want to be a part of it, let us know. You can message any of us, or the link to join is always in the description of a video. So you can join and be a part of that. But without further ado, let's talk AFC North. We talked about how hard-hitting division this is. It's a very wide open division, I think, in general, too. The Bengals winning last year and going to the Super Bowl, but the Ravens have been kingpins in this division. The Steelers have had runs at it, and the Browns, whatever happens with Desean Watson, if he's there, they're a contender as well. So why don't we start with the Bradstradamus here? Why don't you talk about the Ravens and rookies that they drafted that could be fantasy relevant for 2022?
Sure thing. Yeah, man. In terms of rookies drafted, there aren't a lot of options to look at that are going to have tremendous value this year. They didn't draft a running back, didn't draft a quarterback. They signed a good amount of undrafted rookies like Slade Bolden out of Alabama at wide receiver, but they didn't draft any wide receivers. So the best bet, if you're looking for a rookie that they drafted, are tight ends. They drafted Charlie Kolar and Isaiah Likely. I like them both a lot. They're athletic, big-bodied tight ends, but they're also still behind Mark Andrews and Nick Boyle on the depth chart, and it's tough for rookie tight ends to hit that ground running with their blocking protections that they got to learn. So if they had, simply a receiving role, I'd be higher on them, but that's unlikely considering how much the Ravens want to pound the running game. So if you had to stash one of the two in a dynasty league, I'd go with Kolar as the bigger tight end. He's got more impressive athletic metrics. For instance, he ran a 4.67 40, which was 80th percentile for tight ends, and it's 94th percentile. He's 94th percentile in catch radius. I can see him being a better blocker. He's blocking for Breece Hall at Iowa State, and that's the best way for him to see the field. But in terms of redraft, there's no rookies on the Ravens that I'm interested in.
I kind of like Isaiah Likely as a sleeper. I had him as my number 3 tight end going into the draft, and I do think the Ravens do run a lot of multi-tight end sets.
Yeah,
so he could be someone that could be a great touchdown call as far as like getting a lot of touchdowns at the tight end position, running with Mark Andrews there, especially because they don't have a lot of great receivers. I do want to put up rigged unless Trae Young gets a Draymond like Curry this year. This year's Draymond was Jeremy Sachin. I don't even know Jeremy's. That's how unplugged I am from the NBA. So
there you go.
But Sports Wikipedia checking in. Our guy said Bengals are taking the AFC North.
I don't know. I like the Ravens a lot.
I like the value on the Steelers this year.
I think I got the Ravens taking it. I think without
What are the
injuries,
Steelers
they
number?
would have.
What are the Steelers number, Eric?
The odds?
Yeah.
I haven't checked. I think last time I saw it was like plus 350 maybe. I haven't checked recently.
I'd need longer odds than that.
So, Doc, you're taking the Steelers?
I mean, for the value I can get, yeah.
If you just had to pick one, who's winning the division?
I'll go Steelers.
Brad, you're going what are you
going?
Brad?
Ravens.
I'm going Ravens as well. So Sports Wikipedia might have to be part of this water bet, taking the division. Who's the AFC North is definitely wide open. And he's definitely and rigged is on it. Doc, what about you? Let's talk about the what team did you do? The Steelers.
Steelers. I was trying to segue perfectly into it.
There you go.
So they drafted a lot of offensive rookies, and first starting out with Kenny Pickett with the first round 20th pick. I don't think that he's going to be valuable in redraft, barring a Trubisky injury. I think he's more for dynasty leagues, and even speaking with Chris Wormley, shameless plug, that we had on last week, current defensive end for the Steelers, without coming out and saying, thank you. He said that basically Tomlin has spoke highly of Trubisky. They signed him on a 1-year deal. I mean, keep in mind, this is a number 2 overall pick that I believe is 26 years old. So, and he played in an awful Matt Nagy offense. So I think the upside is still there. But they took a couple of receivers, which I think is interesting. They took George Pickens out of Georgia with the second round. He played just 4 games in 2021, where he had 5 catches for 107 yards. The other 3 seasons, a combined 90 for 1,347, 14 touchdowns. He's 6'3", though, and ran a 4.47. So I think that they will likely have him replace Juju. And then the other is Calvin Austin. They took out of Memphis in the 5th round, a speedster, a 4.32 40. And he was first team all ACC 2020 and 2021. He does a little bit of everything. He does punt returns also. And that makes me think what the Steelers do with these late round wide receivers, where they have them on returns, then move them in. We've signed with Mike Wallace, Antonio Brown. A little bit of foreshadowing, but maybe they don't re-sign Deontay Johnson. And then the last one, Connor Hayward, who's a tight end fullback hybrid in the 6th round, younger brother of Cameron Hayward. They said they're going to have him start out at tight end, but might move him around to fullback, even a little bit of special teams. So I think nothing more than an obscure touchdown pick.
Were you going to say something, Brad?
No, yeah. When he was talking about George Pickens, I just want to say that he was the only person to have a better drop rate than Sky Moore. So he had the lowest drop rate over his career than in the entire NCAA. So
he's got huge hands also.
Yeah, he's a real sure. You said he might be the guy to replace Juju, and I think that's spot on.
He was once the potential wide receiver 1 of the 22 class before he teared his ACL. So he had the pedigree, excellent hands, strength, toughness, 63 snaps and only in 2021, but definitely somebody that could be the best receiver in this class potentially if he lives up to the potential he once showed. I mean, he went to Georgia and you saw what he was doing there before he got hurt. So the Steelers, it was frustrating because taking him and then taking Calvin Austin, it's like a team like that needed like they just keep taking him. And I think Calvin Austin's a great call there, Doc.
Did Calvin Austin have like some sort of like disciplinary thing that I didn't know about? Like how as a guy that fast that did that well in Memphis just go undrafted?
Well, he went in like the 5th round, right?
Whatever, 5th round or undrafted, like he had like the fastest time.
Is he undersized?
He's 5'9".
Yeah, he's small, but everybody's small now.
He had a drop off his senior year. I think coming from first team all ACC the previous 2. I mean, Memphis isn't known as, I feel like, a big wide receiver school, but sometimes that's where these obscures.
60 as a Spider-Man.
He's a running back.
But Antonio Gibson was
in college.
Yeah, he was a wide receiver in Memphis.
We might have to say now the player can catch sticky as a Spider-Man glue gun. I like it. And Sports Wikipedia says Joe Burrow will likely be a top 5 quarterback this decade or just outside. He'll be one of the most talked about quarterbacks in the future. I'm going to talk about Joe Burrow in this
I think that
episode
makes sense.
he's going to have a drop off in fantasy this year. That's the one thing I will say.
I don't think that's crazy.
But he is definitely, real life wise, he is fantastic, and definitely, as long as he stays healthy, will be one of the top quarterbacks of this decade. I agree with you, Sports Wikipedia. The Bengals are easy. They didn't draft any offensive players in their draft this year. It was all defensive players. So there is no impact rookies for the Cincinnati Bengals. For the Cleveland Browns, there are a couple that are intriguing, most notably David Bell, who had his draft stock fall once he had a really bad combine. But he had 232 receptions since 2019, which was number 1 in all of the FBS. And he's potentially going to come in there and complement Amari Cooper. I know Donovan Peoples-Jones is there, but I don't think he's necessarily somebody that you can count on being the future at that position for the Cleveland Browns. So
he's throwing on the ball.
That's another big question, but we'll get to that in a second. But I think David Bell has a chance for a lot of volume among the rookie wide receivers. He should go in there and be the number 3 right away and potentially could get up to the number 2. The other player that intrigues me, and he won't be relevant this year, is Jerome Ford, who was one of my favorite running backs coming out of Cincinnati. If you look at his game tape, he is electric when he touches the ball. A little bit small, but he's explosive. The problem is for this year that they have right now Kareem Hunt. There's talks that he could potentially be cut, but for right now, he's still on the team. Dearness Johnson was just brought back on a contract this year. And they even have Demetric Felton, who was the 6th round pick last year that played really well.
It's all behind Nick Chubb.
Yeah, and they're all, of course, behind Nick Chubb. So I don't think Jerome Ford is going to be relevant, barring a ton of injuries this season. But he's someone that's very intriguing in dynasty leagues that you can take now where people aren't talking about him. And he could easily be the backup to Nick Chubb next year. That would not be shocking to me.
Yeah, to your point, it is a contract year for Kareem Hunt, which could mean he could be gone next year.
Yeah, so Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson, I think was a 1-year pretty much guaranteed deal. Demetric Felton's a 6th round pick. There's a good path to Jerome Ford being the number 2 guy next year. So dynasty leagues, look at him. Redraft leagues, he's irrelevant unless a ton of injuries happen. But I really like him a lot. They also drafted Michael Woods, wide receiver at Oklahoma, in the 6th round, but I don't think he might not even make the roster. So that would be the rookie side of things. Let's talk about the actual fantasy relevant players. Going back to the Ravens, Brad, you've been all over the Ravens this offseason. I think feel like making tons of videos about the Ravens. What are your thoughts about them?
Yeah, this may surprise, but I'm not big on anybody on the Ravens outside of Lamar and Mark Andrews. So Lamar's Lamar. Any negativity you saw in the results versus your expectations was strictly based off of injury. He's electric. That's not changing anytime soon. I have him as my QB2 on the year behind only Josh Allen. He's got elite rushing upside and red zone touches and reliable wide receiver targets and Mark Andrews and Bateman. And you can take him with your 1st round pick and not worry in the slightest. I'm going to be avoiding the backfield altogether in Baltimore. Lamar is always going to be the RB1 and the QB1. They were always going to use a running back by committee, and that's even more the case when you're trying to manage health of your young backs. Dobbins and Edwards are coming off of season-ending injuries last year, and this will be their 1st year back. They didn't draft a running back, so that shows the confidence they have that they'll be okay, which is a positive, but they also have Justice Hill coming back to the mix, and they signed Mike Davis, who, while he can be frustrating, being the running back in Baltimore will afford him more holes than he was getting, pretty much anywhere else in his entire career. Even Devontae Freeman busted loose a few good games last year, so I think Mike Davis can do the same. I think it'll be a crapshoot with who gets the running back touches, and I don't want to play that game until more is clear. Somebody's going to have to get cut or injured or something for me to be interested in the Ravens backfield. So I wouldn't draft Dobbins or Edwards until the 8th round, and neither of them will be available then.
Let me ask you this, Brad, before you go to the wide receivers. Sports Wikipedia says since 2018, Ravens have finished top 3 in rushing yards each year. Will the Ravens finish top 3 in rushing yards again?
I'd say yes. I think them drafting tight ends shows, and not wide receivers, shows they're fine with their wide receiver room. and they're more interested in pounding the rock, controlling the clock, letting their defense do work. And I think that leans more towards the running game and Lamar on the ground and Dobbins and Edwards mixing it up. I see no reason why they wouldn't have, a great rushing game again. I'm not interested in the wide receiving options in Baltimore really at all. And that's mainly due to ADP. See, with the pass catchers, Mark Andrews is always an easy choice. I have him as my TE2 this year behind Kelsey. I don't know if you can call Hollywood Brown a safety blanket, but he was Lamar's second favorite target. Now he's gone, and that's going to be going to Andrews and Bateman. But Bateman's ADP is too high for me. I think he's going to have a lot of games where he has 10 receptions for 50 yards. People are saying that he's going to have Hollywood's role, and that's not what he does. He had a lower average air yards and lower average yards per route than Duvernay and Prochet, and both of them are also listed as starters. So I basically, due to hype and ADPs, the only Baltimore players I'm willing to draft are Lamar and Mark Andrews.
Doc, make sure you take note of Riggs' question here, because when we get to the Steelers, I want to address that as well, talking about George Pickens. As far as the Ravens, though, he's asked, NBA Rig asked Brad if you think that Dobbins could be a sure thing RB1. So a top 12 running back, you don't have him anywhere near there.
No, I think he might get drafted as an RB1. He might get drafted as an RB1, and that scares me even more. It's going to be a running back by committee, and there's no telling whether Edwards or Dobbins is going to get those red zone touches, or will it be Lamar? And it probably will be Lamar. It's just they're both nursing injuries that they came off of last year. There's just I have no confidence that any running back has, the lead, has the RB1 role. I think it's a true running back by committee until otherwise shown.
I have J.K. Dobbins just outside RB1 range. I think I have him like RB15. And
he's not even in my RB2 range.
So if you guys remember, of course, he missed all of 2021 with the torn ACL. But in 2020, he carried the ball 134 times for 805 yards and 9 touchdowns. And the overall RB24 on the season, his rookie year, he was RB10 from weeks 11 to 17. So you saw the potential that was there. And health is going to be a big deal with him, of course. But if he's on the field from week 1, I feel like there's still a good path for him to being extremely fantasy relevant.
So, Dave, I get that argument, but were you up on Saquon Barkley after his first year back?
I mean, Saquon Barkley, if I remember, heard he had a few injuries before that. He's had injuries over the last few years.
Sure, but the point is that coming back from your ACL or Achilles, your first year back is not good. It's always your second and third year that you start to feel like yourself. And he's coming back his first year, and just because he has that path, because he's had it in the past, I don't know. It just seems very risky to me. But I understand the argument. It's not crazy. You could be right. I think there are better options.
So the one thing that I am encouraged was because it happened before the season technically started.
That's true.
So he's had a big amount of. It's not like someone like Cam Akers, who came back and rushed it.
So I'm looking. Etienne.
I will say this about Dobbins, because I was debating very hard taking him in our startup dynasty, David. They said there was more than just the torn ACL, that there was some other ligament damage. And that's what gives me a little bit of pause, because
that usually happens with an ACL, though.
Yeah, but for example, if you read Tariq Cohen's letter to himself, that was a major setback. Everybody just assumed it was a ACL, but there was LCL, that there was meniscus damage. So
how sad is that Tariq Cohen story, man? I can't believe he got hurt again.
I know.
It's crazy.
They're obviously, for reference, these players are a little bit older, but this is according to StatCrunch. These are some players before and after the injury. Edgerrin James' yardage went down. Jamal Lewis's yardage stayed the same. Jamal Charles' yardage went up. Adrian Peterson's yardage, everybody knows, went up. Rashard Mendenhall's went down extremely a big amount. Deuce McAllister's, Ronnie Brown's all went down. So I think it depends on the player, but I don't think it's necessarily an open and shut case that the ACL stuff. So it's definitely player to player.
Absolutely.
And Rashad Bateman is, I know, a whole nother argument. We don't want to sit here all this time just talking about the Ravens. I'm big on Rashad Bateman this year. I do think the amount of vacated targets on that team, if you include running backs, is 240 targets, which is an insane amount to have vacant. And to me, volume is king in fantasy football. And he should have a path to a lot of volume. So like you said, Brad, maybe he has 10 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown, but at the end of the day, that's going to be 16.2 PPR points, which is probably going to be a back end like wide receiver one that week just because of the 10 catches. So like, I do think
it's also assuming Prochet and Duvernay get nothing.
I don't see a big thing for Duvernay. I do think it's a bigger role in the offense this year.
I think Duvernay and Prochet both do. They both have they had a super small sample size last year, but they both are very good receivers. And, you know, you look at a guy like Duvernay out of Texas, like he had a great college career. You know, it's all about opportunity and those vacated targets. Duvernay and Prochet mimic Hollywood Brown's game more than Rashad Bateman.
We need a Rashad Bateman bet. We're going to move on. But Rig, I think he's with me on the Dobbins recovery. We're going to be optimistic for him. Hope that he gets back there. Brad is too, of course.
Just not this year.
Yeah. But Rashad Bateman, Rig, we're going to have to in the Discord figure out what the over under for his finish is going to be, because that'll be one between Brad and I for sure. Doc, let's talk about the Steelers. Give us your synopsis on their skill position players and fantasy relevant players.
Yeah, so starting out at the quarterback position, I really love Mitchell Trubisky, where he's getting drafted this year. And I know that's not a popular thing to say, but this is probably the best supporting cast he's ever had. With his time with the Bears, it was mostly just Allen Robinson and then Anthony Miller, Taylor Gabriel, in a not steady offense. So right now, his redraft ranking, he's quarterback 33 with an ADP of 210. So he's going to start out the year, if all we say is true, first career, 64 touchdowns, 38 interceptions. He has a rushing floor of about 200 yards. And just to put it in context, the last 3 years of Ben's career, he had 46 carries for 23 yards. So I think having a multitude of good wide receivers and the rushing upside is going to open up the Steelers playbook like we haven't seen in years. The thing that does issue me, he has 27 fumbles in his career. He's very careless with the ball. If he holds on to it, besides the interceptions part. With Najee, he's a top 3 or 4 pick for me. And it's just in terms of the volume itself. I don't think anybody is worried about Benny Snell or Anthony McFarland taking carries away. Are we Trey Edmonds? We're not. He had 307 carries last year, which was second in the NFL to Jonathan Taylor. 1,600 total yards, 10 total touchdowns, barring injury. I mean, we even talk about like Nyheim Hines is going to take some Jonathan Taylor carries. I don't think we can say that about anyone with Pitt. Najee Harris might have the backfield to himself more than anyone else in the NFL. We don't have to worry about their backup. His handcuff probably doesn't even get drafted besides deeper leagues. Rick, to touch on your point about Juju, it's interesting because his role has fluctuated. So first 2 years, he's working alongside Antonio Brown. Then Antonio Brown leaves. He then switches to the slot, or he was slot with Antonio Brown, then switches to the outside for 2 years with Deontay and only plays 5 games last year. I'd assume Pickens being 6'3", that he is going to play the wide, deep outside role, but I think the Steelers are going to be creative how they use him. I think especially a red zone threat. But with Deontay Johnson, you like what you see out of him. His receptions have gone up each year. Yards have gone up each year. Even touchdowns, being in a slot role, he got 8. But I wonder, do the Steelers resign him? He's an unrestricted free agent after this season. And with the way that wide receivers are getting paid and the hesitancy that Steelers typically don't dole out at that position, I'm wondering if he could be gone. But that might be good for fantasy implications in redraft, because contract years usually are when people have a really good fantasy year. Claypool, I think, does bounce back. He's had back-to-back yards in the 800 range, 873 and 860. But the big drop-off was touchdowns. Rookie season, he had 9 touchdowns, including that 1 4-touchdown game. And he only had 2 total last year. And I think with as much crap as he's been getting this offseason about his immaturity, I mean, he put out a story thinking he's top 3 wide receiver. He's a 6'4", 238 frame. I think he comes in this year and really, really steps it up. I think 1,000 yards, 5 touchdown floor. And then Pat Freiermuth, he's a good value for tight end, but I see a little bit of Robert Tonyan regression. Last year, he had 7 touchdowns, which was 6th most among tight ends. But I don't see that repeating, especially he had only 497 yards. But if you don't get one of the top tier ones, you're looking for someone that just is average, that can get in the end zone. And that's probably the definition of Freiermuth.
Surprised you guys don't have more. So only channel that knows that covers multiple sports. Also, you guys give valid points. Sports Wikipedia, you are the man. Tell your friends, man. We're trying to grow and have this triple play be a household name. So it's always word of mouth and people like you that help support the channel. So we appreciate you, man. Really do. And then Rigged also adds perhaps Cincinnati's triplets. So we're gonna talk about Cincinnati in a second here. And also too deep with Claypool plus Pickens would be wild. Deontay gobbling all the slot. Dump offs, this offense plus Najee well suited to compete against Cincinnati. Yeah, they definitely have a good offense, but it starts at the quarterback position and what they're going to be able to do with Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky there. Pickens, the number 4 rookie wide receiver this year. I think I'll probably have him around there. I would have a few above him. So I think that's
I had him around there too, but that might even be low when it's all said and done. He's really good.
As long as he's healthy, he's definitely has that the potential. Let's talk about the Bengals real quick. Let's be fair. Jamar Chase, top 3 wide receiver, most likely. Top 5 at the very worst, you would think.
Yeah, absolutely.
T. Higgins is somebody that is probably the best number 2 in the NFL right now. I don't have to give you a lot of statistics about him. He's going pretty much as a back-end wide receiver 1 in most fantasy drafts.
I have had my wide receiver 13, yeah.
Yeah, so like pretty much a back-end wide receiver 1, high-end 2. He's going to get, playing with Jamar Chase, there's going to be weeks that Jamar Chase just booms, that T. Higgins doesn't do as much. And then T. Higgins is obviously going to have weeks where he gets you a couple touchdowns. That's just going to be the Bengals offense. I don't need to give you guys analysis on that. I think everybody with eyes can see that. But let's talk about the sports Wikipedia has brought up. Besides protecting Joe Burrow, what do the Bengals need to improve on? I want to talk about Joe Burrow specifically for a second. So if you look at the amount of attempts last year for quarterbacks, Joe Burrow was 15th in attempts at 520 attempts total. The completion percentage, it was right at, if I'm not mistaken, he had the highest completion percentage at 70.4%. Is a 70% completion percentage repeatable? I really don't think so. You don't see that too often consistently year after year. The low attempts being 20th or 15th in the league last year. The big thing with that I look at when evaluating quarterbacks in terms of their year-to-year success for fantasy if they don't run is touchdown percentage. And Joe Burrow was 3rd in the NFL last year with a 6.5% touchdown percentage. Now, for reference, league average is somewhere between 4 to 5%, which does not sound like a big gap, but it really is. If you have a quarterback that gets, like Aaron Rodgers had a 7% touchdown percentage last year, that stuff you don't see usually repeat year after year for most quarterbacks. It normally settles in that 4 to 5 range, which means if they don't run consistently, they're not going to be getting as many touchdowns, especially, again, the touchdown percentage, meaning what percent of their throws is throwing touchdowns. Again, that is something in Joe Burrow's profile that is not going to be sticky year after year. You're going to have, obviously, early on in the season, they're not going to want to wear him out. They're going to run the ball like you saw with Joe Mixon. They have a very capable run game. I do think Joe Burrow, because he's now elevated and going now is like, I think the QB 6 or 7 in drafts. That is his ceiling to me, most likely this year based off of his year last year. And I do think that for fantasy, Joe Burrow is being very overvalued based on what he did last year and stats that aren't going to stick this
Where do you have him?
Season. I have to look on my rankings. I believe I have him as
like I got it pulled up right here. You have him as your QB 12.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like he's going to be a back end QB 1.
Okay. I don't think that's correct. I think you made a lot of valid points.
Yeah, so I
QB 8 for similar reasons.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of, he's in that like Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr range. Like these guys are going to be able to be fantasy relevant, but they're not going to do it with their legs. Joe Burrow, as far as the Bengals needing to improve on, they improved their offensive line, which is fantastic. He's going to have more time to throw. He'll definitely be accurate. I expect some regression in terms of just his efficiency. NBA Rick says
brings up a good point right here. Uzomah did leave. Like he's not a nothing asset. He was a very good tight end last year, and I think him getting hurt really hurt them.
And I don't remember the top of my head who they used to replace him because I can't think who they brought in.
I don't remember his name either.
But it's definitely not.
Is it not Drew Sample season?
No, it's not Drew Sample season.
No. I do think Burrow is going to be fine. He's not going to be the QB 6 or 7 that you're drafting him as, in my opinion, personally. But the Bengals have a lot of Aidan Hurst. Thank you, Rigged. He's actually the one that they're talking about as a sleeper potentially to step into a role like that. But he'll
I've fallen for that one before. That Aidan Hurst.
Yeah.
I'll pass.
But yeah, I mean, Burrow's is obviously a great real life quarterback. Very much, I think, going to be a somewhat run of the mill average quarterback for fantasy.
Them fighting words, David.
Browns, let's touch on them real quick as we wrap up here. Nick Chubb, back end RB1 in PPR leagues, top 5, 6, 7 quarterback or running back for redraft. Is that where you guys are at with him? For non PPR.
Yeah, I think everyone else on the team, and I mean, just talking about the elephant in the room, it's going to be Desean Watson. If he plays, which I don't think many of us think he will, then, the positions are upgraded. But with Jacoby Brissett, assuming being week 1 starter, I mean, you got to downgrade everybody.
He's like fantasy, whatever you want to call it.
I don't like all the Jacoby Brissett slander, but I mean, he is a downgrade from Watson.
So I did a video about this. It flopped, unfortunately, but I have Nick Chubb at RB8 right now, and basically my thinking was that if Desean Watson is out for the year, which I project he will be, and it looks like he might be, then it's going to be Kareem Hunt season, because they're going to be in a lot of, 3rd and longs, a lot of passing downs, and Kareem Hunt is useful in that situation, whereas Nick Chubb doesn't get a lot of air targets. If Desean Watson plays, he could be top end RB1 or middle of the pack RB1 for Chubb. I mean, but it doesn't look like he's going to play. So I think it's more Hunt.
As Riggs points out, like Watson's going to be out. Brissett starting is.
I just want to give a little bit of shout out to Jacoby Brissett, because David, I like him more than the average person. Over 7,700 passing yards for his career, 36 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, and 13 rushing touchdowns.
He's not good for fantasy He's not good for receivers for fantasy.
He's also gotten worse every year that he's
the amount of slander that he's gotten. I'm not okay with.
He's a fine backup. He's just not good. And then
he was horrendous in Miami.
But isn't everybody bad in Miami for the most part?
I don't know. There's a lot of good quarterbacks that wouldn't be bad in Miami,
Aidan Hurst has a mental health podathon, very popular actually. Yeah, like it's definitely something worth checking out. July 16th.
Aidan Hurst, great dude.
Yeah, I don't know about for fantasy per se.
I'll leave it at that. He's a great dude, that's for sure.
Last thing before we get out of here is Joe Mixon underrated?
No. He finally got the recognition he deserved last season.
Yeah, I think last year he became properly rated, but before last year he was probably underrated.
Top 10 running back. I think most people put him there in redraft.
That's about right.
I know we didn't touch on the Cleveland pass catchers really. Amari Cooper, potential wide receiver 1 with Desean Watson. Without Desean Watson, I think he's probably like a back end wide receiver 2. To be honest with you guys, can we leave it at this? If Jacoby Brissett's starting, I'm sorry, Eric. Jacoby Brissett is starting. There's not any wide receiver in this offense you're comfortable starting in a 12-team league.
That's fine.
The defense.
Yeah, that's true. It could be ugly in Cleveland next year. They're very hard to assess right now because there's so much uncertainty.
They did that to themselves. They decided they wanted to sign Desean Watson, and that's what they did.
And if you guys are going week 1 with Jacoby Brissett, Allen Robinson, Robert Woods, I would go A-Rob as well over
A-Rob.
A-Rob, Robert Woods, Amari Cooper. We're all on the A-Rob train there. And with that said, we are going to wrap up. Eric has a basketball game he's going to, so he's getting ready to change into his uniform and drop a big old 2 points tonight. So
86.
Give you 86. Anything you guys want to plug real quick, Brad? Anything you want to plug out there?
We always got content going on YouTube. I just dropped a video on YouTube. Dave has an excellent video with Austin Eckler, a great interview on YouTube. You should check that out. Our baseball pods, football pods, basketball pods, everything on YouTube. We want a lot of viewership on YouTube, so check us out on YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's really that's the biggest thing we push is our YouTube content. So if you guys always want to support, you can subscribe to the YouTube and make sure you guys join the Discord. If you want to join, again, message any of us or the link's always in the video description. to join there. That's going to wrap us up, Rigged. Bring that question into the Discord because we got to wrap it up here. Always appreciate you, my friend. You are the man, but that would be a great one that we can put in the Discord there. But yeah, for Doc, for Brad, I'm D. Mendy. Johnny Foosball is going to be out one more week while he's on vacation. The whole crew will be back together in a few weeks, but you'll see all three of us next week to wrap up the AFC East with our division previews here. But until then, we're going to break like a bread truck and we're going to haul these buns. Catch you guys next one.
Peace.